What's up guys, Ash here, and of course today we're talking about Leton's martial artist. Martial artist is all about being simple and efficient and is probably the direct opposite of Superstar, which is very meticulous and very detailed, and I totally get it. Personally, I'm a Superstar fan, absolutely love Superstar, but I know there's plenty of players out there that just don't want to deal with that, and this is the build for you. Anyway, let's hop right into it.
Here we are on 46 Violent, and at a high level overview, Martial Artist was designed to be a frontline fighter for sure. They are best situated in melee on melee situations. Many abilities such as Close Combatant, Counterattack, Forestallment, even their class Mastery work best when it's just straight fisticuffs. You can see he's taking on Fu and Fam here and literally just freezing everybody. He's also taking very minimal damage, as you can see, 43 right there, and anybody that doesn't have impulse fields is basically going to die. Absolutely insane, and this is such a great frontline fighter. Akin to Battle Mage, this is probably the class that you want the furthest up in your entire party. Right here we have an ice build, and you can see anything that could be in melee range is just getting frozen. Anything that's ranged is actually getting blocked or dodged. So you really can't go wrong with this kind of level of tank. And preheating is also preventing action time delay, and you can see he's just absolutely ruining this. And if he had teammates with him for this part, like Hazing just comes up behind and does a sweeping fire, that's the end of all these dudes. So, it's such an insane class, and I recommend it as your basically frontline tank. But if Martial Artist was designed to tank, why do I recommend Irene as an offensive martial artist and Leton as a defensive martial artist? That's because Irene is a fire ESP user, and as a fire user, Irene will take 20 fire SP for putting an enemy out of action, or gain 20 SP. This is pretty close to a free roar victory, making it so gaining SP will skyrocket on her. And in turn, that increased SP gain will then convert into damage, increasing her damage by 3 damage per fire SP. This means that as the fight goes on, she'll deal more and more damage, and as you can see here, she's just absolutely out of control. Additionally, she'll gain an attack slot from being a fire user. This means more offensive possibilities on the mastery board, and it just synergizes really well for her. In contrast, Leton is an Ice ESP user, and as an Ice user, Leton will gain 10 Ice SP when blocking enemy attacks. He'll also reduce damage done by enemies by 2 per 1 Ice SP. Opposite to Irene, this means that as the fight goes on, he'll receive less and less damage, making him an incredibly ideal frontline tank. Additionally, he'll gain an additional defense slot, where Irene would get an offense slot, which of course means more and more defensive possibilities. This basically puts them as fire and ice, and they're complete opposites. As you build your Leton martial artist tank, you will have to choose between 2 schools of thought. Defensively, there's a big argument between Frosty Fortress or Gatekeeper. Personally, I think both have their merits. For sure, Frosty Fortress is a better defensive option, and Frosty Fortress is designed for a traditional tank. This is the guy that's absolutely on the front lines, and if your team is in desperate need of a solid tank, this might be something that you would be interested in. Frosty Fortress gives massive block along with damage reduction, an aura to allies, additional armor and resistance. As Leton has one of the lowest resistances in the game, this really helps kind of shore up some of his weaknesses. The downside, however, to Frosty Fortress is that it has terrible mastery board synergy. Ice Castle and Iron Wall team with nothing useful. Ice Shield can go into Ice Soldier, but that's about it. It takes a staggering 11 training points, and with minimal synergy, it's a very high price to pay for such an excellent ability. On the flip side, Gatekeeper is designed for a hybrid tank. I personally like hybrid tanks because there's limited tools for aggro in this game. Quite literally, Taunt is one of the very few abilities, and Leton does get it, but he can only use Body Blow and Taunt on Superstar, which I think is kind of silly because it really looks like they designed martial artists to be a frontline tank. But Gatekeeper takes very little training points and synergizes well with Close Combatant and Shedding. You'll find Close Combatant everywhere within the Fighter subclass and Martial Artist class. Shedding feeds into Practical Defensive Tactics, which adds another 20% block shred on counter, additional block in melee, and AT decrease when activating Shedding. Shedding can also feed into Mountain for dealing with smash downs from Black Clowns, getting knocked around and stuff, along with gaining chances to win. For this particular video, we'll be focusing on a Gatekeeper build, but I'll also be placing a Frosty Fortress build later on in the Mastery section. If you guys noticed in that last video, Leton's running an ability called Overpower. Overpower is one of the most devastating abilities in this game. Quite literally, Forestallment will reset any time there isn't an enemy left within melee range. This basically means as long as he can one-shot them, he'll kill them, and Forestallment will just keep on going over and over again. Absolutely insane, and this actually doesn't remove from Leton's ability to offensively fight either, which is just so awesome, and it really synergizes well in his kit. I'm sure a lot of our players are wondering, all right, well, Overpower is great until it's not, right? Where you just can't kill them in one. And that's where Martial Artist kind of takes over here. We'll be coupling Overpower with, of course, Unpredictable. This is an incredible block shred of up to 50%. Listening Energy, which is a martial artist ability only for responsive attacks, will shred another 20%. And then the 3-piece golden set will give another 15% for a devastating 85% block shred. This will generally give you full block shred on 99% of units in this game. And more importantly at the moment, even White Clowns, who usually run 75 or so block. It's absolutely insane. And this allows Leton to basically defensively kill as much as a offensive unit would. It's it's totally insane, and this is a martial artist specialty, and when you have 100% chance to kill a White Clown coming after you, it's just wild. This, of course, converts into a frontline tank that not only can take a hit, but can dish it too. You'll find that Leton now becomes the king of fighting melee units like the Drifter Clowns, as none will survive even a single hit. Of course, anything strong enough to actually bust through Leton's Overpower will of course have to then face his devastating counterattack, along with one of the most feared masteries in this entire game, Movement on Silence. Movement on Silence is a devastating ability, and it synergizes with the mastery Returning the Enemy's Force, multiplying the counterattack of Leton's damage into mind-boggling numbers coming from a tank. Along with having a Forestallment block shred of 85%, his counterattack will also have an 85% block shred from Unpredictable, Practical Defensive Tactics, and of course the 3-piece golden set. Even Destrons that are berserked can easily kill themselves on Movement on Silence, as the additional melee damage they deal will just enhance counterattack to insane levels of damage. Alright, and we have the abilities overview. Honestly, if not for Body Blow being Leton's only counter / forestallment, I would actually recommend Taunt, just to give him that more tanky feel. But unfortunately, Body Blow is his only responsive / counter attack, as you can see down there at the bottom. And this is honestly the core of the build, so it will do you well to learn this through and through. Body Blow, of course, will take a 75% from attack power and 25% from ESP power. Our build that we're running will have very limited ESP. In fact, I think it's just the base damage for Leton, so he won't really be pulling from that. Of course, Body Blow can do knockback. This is amazing against walls and stuff where if the target were to live, you can stun them. It's also going to increase AT should they live, although not many targets live Leton at the moment in this build. You will get a damage bonus from Still Stance, although why you would do that, I can't imagine the scenario, especially on this build. And then, of course, this will help a ton is the bonus critical hit damage on all of these overpowers and counterattacks. So just a great ability. Wish it was 100% attack power, but obviously incredible. For general abilities, I recommend Double Wheel Kick, Frost Crescent Kick, Back Tumbling, and Warming Up, with only maybe being Double Wheel Kick. So for the ones that we're not taking, Ice Arrow and Ice Spear, they pull 100% more or less from ESP power. I guess Ice Arrow is at 75% there, but we just don't have an ESP build. The only time you would consider this would be if you were bonded correctly with Leton and, the units that you team with him, you want to be able to guard with him a little bit, but we're not going to be taking kind of a freeze build, so really these would not be good. And then Twister and Double Wheel Kick are actually very similar. They both get this massive 100% damage bonus and Still Stance. The only difference is that this pulls from 50% ESP power. It's really not going to help us too much. And then Double Wheel Kick is not going to pull at all from ESP power. It's going to have a higher attack modifier along with a hip modifier, which is pretty cool and obviously excellent on a main tank, as well as an Ice SP modifier too. So this is also going to be an additional range. Twister is on one range only, Double Wheel's at 2. It's also going to be unavoidable thanks to Endless Training. So I just prefer this, but honestly this doesn't see too much use. Frost Crescent Kick, I use this always on Leton regardless of class. Mostly because this counts as a second dashing attack. In the off chance that you're out of range, Frost Crescent is 3 range. It's going to give you that bonus, distance on attack, and it'll also do knockback, so you can include stun into this if you're hitting them into a wall. And with Endless Training, you're going to get a bit more bonus damage to exposed state, so you're going to get 100% damage increase to exposed state. It's also going to hit for ice. And so this changes things around when you're fighting, like let's say there's a unit that has high armor but low resistance. You'll get a lot more use out of Frost Crescent Kick, and just something to keep as a good alternative to Body Blow. Back Tumbling, of course, very similar to Windwalk. All mobility abilities are just awesome in this game, and Endless Training is actually going to reduce it down to 0 AP cost, so it's worth taking almost always. And then probably one of the most ridiculous general abilities in the game. This is right up there with Sweeping Fire and Trance. Warming Up is insane. This should be on every Leton build ever. I'm sure people are very used to this. The obvious nice speed hit, block, dodge chance. The speed helps him get to the front line. Totally awesome. More importantly, of course, immunity to physical debuffs. That's just crazy. On top of that, immunity to delaying action time. This is actually one of the major differences between Irene and Leton. Irene, whether you're on MA or even Battle Mage, and let's say you have her as just a frontline fighter, she can be suppressed down with delayed action time, just from snipers or, suppressors, Frostcron, units like that. That doesn't work on Leton, not even in the slightest. So that's a welcome addition, of course, along with immunity to physical debuff. And then rarely understood is the, of course, cast delay shred by half. That's totally insane. So any ability you see on here, go ahead and shred it in half. Double Wheel Kick will go from 30 to 15. Body Blow will go from 10 to 5. Just totally awesome. And then even on top of that, and this is very much a superstar thing, and I don't think we have too many superstar players, but if you're a superstar player, you know this to be true. Probably the best ability in the game mechanics is that preheating will remove all ability cooldowns. This is less useful on martial artists, but absolutely devastating on Superstar. And of course, you can still make use out of this. If you wanted to run a one-shot, one-kill martial artist, and, you didn't have room for, let's say, Catharsis, you could Body Blow something, then you could Frost Crescent Kick something, and set yourself up for a Double Wheel Kick. All of them would then be on cooldown, and then you could do Warming Up and go through the motions. But generally on a tank Leton, you want to have this before you go into the fight because you don't want him, stuck with bleed or poison or some nonsense. And then finally for overcharge ability, Froststorm Kick, very nice. You can see with trained attack, it's getting a huge bonus modifier, base dealing 864 damage there. Unlike on Superstar where you have both abilities, between the two, Frostmill just doesn't give enough of an attack power modifier. You can see that 25% there. So, we're going to take Froststorm Kick because this is basically the boss killer. But honestly, not too much stuff is going to live Leton's, just basic body blow. That's where all of the build really goes into. And we have the stats, personalities, and equipment page. So if you want to use God-given talent, I would say just be on Superstar. This is very similar to, like Giselle on Hunter. It's just, there are very specific personal masteries that are meant for each class, and this is definitely one of them. High-end anti-freezing fluid. This is not bad. The problem is that preheating kind of does this. The only saving grace would be that warming up / preheating, eventually it will fall off. And during that period, this would be nice, but I don't know. It's just not good enough. You don't need the anti-freezing fluid because you're going to be doing body blow all the time. So you're not going to have to worry about frozen blood in the slightest like you would on Superstar. So my recommendation is Acrobat. Of course, this is a great ability. Leton's going to have good dodge. Not bad dodge, not great dodge, just nice in the middle. And this actually works quite often. If you guys notice, the clowns actually miss quite often, even on, characters with no dodge. So that his decent dodge is going to help a lot with that. Of course, his class mastery is martial art. This is going to take place anytime he's being attacked. So you can tell that this was meant to be kind of a tanking class. And you're going to add additional block chance by 20. And then, of course, a little bit of that dodge chance again. Even though you're only seeing 36, that's going to be 46 with martial art. And while you might not be dodging any snipers, you will be occasionally dodging, some of the ranged fighters with machine guns and stuff. So it's definitely a welcome addition. And then, of course, Leton, like I mentioned earlier, is a Ice ESP user. He's going to gain SP from blocking. He's going to reduce damage done as his SP goes up. And then, of course, he's going to get that extra defense slot, just perfectly making this well-built tank. So, for stats, definitely good health pool. I do consider 3,000 to be the hybrid fighters. You'll see this on like Elisa and such. A heavy tank would probably have 3,500, 4,000. I preferred a hybrid tank build, so that's what you're going to see here. Street Fighter, of course, pretty good, giving about 600 health and going to be a huge boon. For Vigor, you're not going to really see him run out ever on this build, a Gatekeeper build, where all these forestallments aren't going to really take any vigor. So you're never going to have a vigor issue with this. Now, I will caveat that with, on Frosty Fortress, depending on how you use him, you could run out of vigor on it because he is not running something like, the Battle Mage ability that recovers 10 vigor that kind of cancels out magic armor. So that's the attack power, not bad. ESP power, it's absolute base. Hit chance, and we're going to start getting into the stats that are very hidden here. So hit chance, mine is running 116%, which is not bad. Like I recommend to most people, 130 is kind of the sweet spot. This is not including wrestling, which is going to be 15%. And then I want to say practical offensive tactics is going to be an additional 10% to wrestling for a total of 25. So 116 plus 25, he'll be at 141. You won't see Leton missing. And then on top of that, he's also going to have unpredictable. That's going to shred dodge by 25%. So if you guys notice back on the Yasha map where he's fighting the spiders, he wasn't missing at all, and they were on webbing. So they were having their massive dodge increase, and he didn't miss at all. So it's really good. For critical hit chance, we're going to come back to that. Critical hit damage, this is actually kind of silly. Just the way that the build is done up, you can see my Leton's running approximately 400% critical hit damage, which is probably not something you would normally see on Martial Artist. And that's because I believe a lot of players are kind of stuck in the middle. They want to do all these things with Martial Artist, and honestly, Martial Artist is meant to just be very basic, very simple. It's the complete opposite of Superstar, and I actually quite like that. 1500 armor, absolutely not bad. That's about what I expect from a front line. Resistance is kind of low, and again, this is where Frosty Fortress comes in. But here's the thing. The majority of enemies that you'll fight in the game right now, like the Drifter Clowns, are going to be hitting for physical. Yeah, will it be a problem with some of the Krons and maybe a couple crabs? Sure. But in general, you will have a 100% block, and you won't have to worry too much about it. Of course, his block chance, and this is the most deceptive stat on this board, sitting at 85. This, of course, is not taking into account Gatekeeper's Sentinel. Sentinel, let's say there's just 5 mobs within range. That's 25% block, putting him at 110. If he gets attacked in melee range, which I would be surprised to see anything get to him. Like you saw with Way there, just total shred. He's going to get another 20, so that'll put him at 130. If you put in neutralizing enemy force, that's going to put him to 160. You'd be surprised the amount of block that actually what real combat looks like. Same thing, again with dodge, 46% there, and you'll get real use out of Acrobat all the time, which is great. One of the main focuses is actually speeding up Leton. Leton is generally really slow on Martial Artist, so I put a lot of focus into raising his speed. 126 is very good, especially for my team. This is going to put him in, like, I don't know, maybe 3rd or 4th to go, and this is going to keep him up at the front quite well, along with the move distance. So for equipment, let's talk about the 3-set golden. Of course, this is very awesome, and it's going to give you that 85% block shred, and I highly recommend this. This is going to give you what you saw with the white clowns, just totally one-shotting them all the time. Incredible set, and it's just hard to go wrong. On top of that, we are going to be taking Way's combat gloves. This is really good because, well, a ton of reasons, but the passive is probably the best thing. Damage dealt to enemies whose armor is lower than your attack power increases by 30%. You'd be surprised how much this incorporates from even 1300 attack power. But I will say, Overpower is very offensive based, even though it's a defensive ability. This is one of those characters where you will need to +9 their gear, and I just happen to recommend Way's gloves. What's also particularly cool about this build, and I wanted to bring this back to the critical hit chance. So I'm at 48 plus 15, so 63. And of course, at 63, you can technically run into keen sense problems. And so this is where you could throw on, let's say, Berserker's gloves. And this will push you from, that 62 or so to 71, or about 70%. Along with an excitement potion, crit chance by 30. That's going to give you 100% even on keen sense mobs like white clowns and some of the masks and stuff. So, consider that if you have that kind of issue. I'm perfectly content with having Rapid on for the extra speed, and then being at like a 90 percent crit chance. Usually there's no issue with that. And then of course the Black Iron Flame boots, these are very good. Boots are definitely a toss-up. This is kind of, whatever you guys kind of want to throw on there. I will give, this is giving that extra 30%, which is pushing them to almost 400% critical hit damage. Absolutely insane. Every point will matter when you're talking about doing overpower on white clowns back-to-back. But I will give an honorable mention to the Indigo Crabmint boots. This is great if you run out of basic slots for massiveness. So you will get resistance from knockbacks. This is basically massiveness as a mastery built into the boots. On top of that, it's also level 50 gear, so the stats are very high. Notice the armor at 453. It has tons of resistances that people honestly don't normally take into account. So this is a great ability if you can't fit in massiveness or just want to tweak the build a little bit. And we have the Mastery board. This is the 12 gauge build, and if you guys have ever shot a gun in real life, or hell, shot a gun in Counter-Strike or Halo or something, you know that being up close means instant death, and this build is no exception. So as always, feel free to pause, take a look, take a gander, see what you would keep, see what you would throw out. For the core offensive masteries, we're going to be taking Overpower, Unpredictable, and Listening Energy. Unpredictable has surprising benefit, not just from the obvious dodge and block shred. 25% dodge and 50% block shred is certainly very nasty, but you'd be surprised what comes out of Overwhelm and or Punishment. It adds another factor to the build that you won't normally see, and it'll come in at the most random of times, and you'll be like, oh yeah, I do have that. That's awesome. But of course, the primary purpose is the shred. That's crazy, and it feeds into listening energy as well. So it actually turns into 35% dodge shred and 70% block shred, which of course is absolutely out of this world. Keep in mind, listening energy only affects responsives. So basically your forestallments, whereas unpredictable will be affecting everything from overwhelm, punishment to forestallments and counterattack, which is neat. And all of that goes into, of course, overpower. Overpower is absolutely nuts, and basically as long as there isn't an enemy that stayed there after the turn or somehow lived your onslaught, it will refresh and it'll just keep killing. And honorable mention to Alacrity and Concentration. This actually feeds into a lot of the abilities that Leton kind of needs. So Alacrity, of course, is going to be helping with the Acrobat, which is going to be getting him up sooner, just to make sure that he's in position correctly and protecting your, mid-row fighters. Concentration is going to give him that little bit of extra bump so that you have that 100% chance with Excitement Potion to always crit. That way, even white clowns with keen sense doesn't even matter. And for core defensive masteries, of course, we're going to be taking movement on silence. This is just absolutely silly. The percentage increase the damage dealt for counterattack, 250%. If you've ever been countered by Zhao Zai as a melee unit, you will know how absurd this is. Of course, this takes into account returning the enemy's force, and this is really the core of the martial artist build. Every martial artist build should have movement on silence because it's just that nasty. Of course, it also gives a ton of block chance, neutralizing enemy force, 30% block chance on melee hits, and just absolutely silly. That no build is complete without it. Gatekeeper, of course, the two schools of thought, Frosty Fortress versus Gatekeeper. Gatekeeper is actually awesome also because every time you activate shedding, you're going to decrease your AT time. And believe it or not, this board is actually going to gain you AT anytime you use counterattack, as opposed to falling into that, plus 150 AT, endless abyss. And then, of course, Street Fighter, health. The biggest health increase and what kind of gives Leton, at least hybrid fighter tank status and close to, primary tank status. And we have a quick defensive showcase. So right here we're in 50 Violent. Wei just got Overcharge. And if you guys are unfamiliar with Wei's Overcharge, it's a triple hit. It's nasty. It's destructive. He also has Breakthrough, so he shreds your block in half. Absolutely nuts. Wei is going to come over, do absolutely tickle me Elmo damage. All three hits did 45 each for a total of 135 total out of his 4,000 health. I think Leton has a giant potion on or something. And of course, you see neutralizing enemies force on. You see movement on silence. There's just so much in the background here, but the short version is my base is 85% block. If you add in the class mastery of martial art, that'll be 105% block. If you add in, give or take, maybe 10 or so units up here and back here, that's another 50% block from Sentinel. So that's going to put you at 105 to 155. If you add in neutralizing enemy force, that's going to put you at 185. And I'm sure there's some other block in there that I'm not even counting, but even if there isn't, that means that with Breakthrough, Wei is having to deal with a 92% block rate despite having Breakthrough. So absolutely nuts. Of course, Sniper takes a shot, fire support, nice 89. This is great frontline tanking defenses. Oh yeah, look at this. So Sentinel was, I can't even imagine what Sentinel is. Anyway, Leton was well over 200% block chance, and that's no exaggeration. Of course, the hit comes from returning the enemy's force, movement on silence, and Wei gets his butt handed to him immediately. Oh, he even got final blow in too. Just absolutely nasty, and yeah, this is what you can expect defensively. And for core support masteries, we're going to be taking practical offensive tactics, practical defensive tactics, and of course, endless training. Endless training is nuts, and I would definitely say core for any build, and mostly because it's going to remove the action point on warming up and back tumbling. To go without this is pretty tough. Honorable mention as well, again, Frost Crescent Kick will get that exposed state damage that you'll see pretty darn often. And the rest are okay, but really it's all about those action point reductions. For practical offensive tactics, this is where the build really starts to sing in defensive tactics, and this is what you won't really see because people usually put together these weird hybrid builds that don't work. This build is very centered, especially with common masteries, and that's another benefit of using overpower and predictable combined. So of course, it's going to be taking practical martial arts. For every one using common masteries, you're going to get health 20, hit chance 0.5, crit hit damage by 3. And then on practical offensive tactics, for every common masteries, health further increases by 10, so you're going to get that boost that Street Fighter gives. Martial Arts Manual, you're going to get that critical hit damage increase by 3% per common mastery. Practical Defensive, on the activation of Shedding, for everyone currently using common masteries, your action time decreases by 1. I'm currently using 13 common masteries on this board, and so this is actually going to be, if you activate Shedding on counterattack, 13 AT from Practical Defensive Tactics, 10 AT from Gatekeeper, and another 10 AT from Unpredictable, because they are likely going to die from the counterattack, as movement on silence leaves no one alive. For a total of negative 33 AT, meaning his counterattack will gain him 3 AT, which is just so awesome. But these are absolutely awesome and perfect supports. This is also going to be what gives Leton his 85% counterattack block shred versus forestallment. Of course, listening energy is only working on forestallment. Returning the enemy's force on practical defensive is going to give that extra 20%, exactly what listening energy would do. Just absolutely nuts, and these are core abilities, but what makes them particularly good is if you keep adding these common masteries, you're going to get more and more, and you'll find on a lot of builds that it's just missing this. Like, for example, just really quick, this is one of my boards, and even though it has practical defensive tactics and offensive tactics, there's only counterattack in best condition. And I consider this a decent board, but it doesn't feed into it the way that 12 gauge does. Okay, so I have 2 commons on this. Guess what? I get 1% hit chance. Awesome. And I see that a lot with a lot of the newer players kind of, puttering around. This is a very focused build, and it does exactly what martial artist was supposed to do, which is take in that energy and return it right back. All right, and let's go through the alternative masteries really quick, because there's certainly some great honorable mentions here. Number 1, of course, being improvisation. This is going to give you decrease in AT by 10 for counter or forestallment. Obviously awesome. Add some block. Obviously awesome. Cheerful move, not bad if you do cheerful dance type ability for AT minus 10. The problem is, actually, that I found is that he gets up too fast. And believe it or not, you're actually going to burn through your warming up, preheating status effect while this is on. It's pretty ridiculous, and you just wouldn't think of this kind of stuff, but it's pretty wild. What I mentioned earlier of me having 33 AT per counter, that's not counting if he did Acrobat. So that's 43 AT, and Leton has no problem with getting turns, and it's really weird because you guys, I'm sure, all know, if you make the super tanky Leton, it just feels like he's in the back because you didn't give him enough speed. Anyway, improvisation is awesome, and this was really hard to fight between this and move your body to the rhythm. But as a whole, this is just better. But certainly, this is a great honorable mention. Mountain. I love chance to win. You know, my team runs off of kills, and chance to win just, you know, it's all about it. It's just that you can get this with the crab mitt boots for massiveness, and chance to win is just not that good. It's good, just not that good. Same thing with revenge. You know, of course, one, overpower takes the spotlight generally, but in the off chance you have to switch to counterattack, guess what? Movement on silence is going to handle it. And so stacking in revenge, you know, who cares if you do 20,000 or 50,000 damage? It's dead. So this, I've just find revenge to be overkill, and that actually undefeated. You know, again, this is very similar to improvisation, except for the fact that there is no room for veteran on this board. Plus, we're also running Golden Piece 3 set, so there's no stuns either. But you know, obviously, this looks like it has good synergy, and it does. It's just a little too fast. You know, if you put this on with improvisation, then you're going to get 53 AT on a counterattack. If you dodge the hit with Acrobat, Leton's going to get 63 AT minus the 30 from counterattack. So he's going to gain 33 AT. It's just silly. It's just silly. And we have the 12 gauge showcase. So here we are on 47 Violent. Just had a frog come up. Block for 20, of course, absolutely insane. And notice neutralizing enemies' force is coming on. Movement on silence is coming on. And remember, each block is 10 ice SP. Another frog comes along. He actually triggers a poison, but he's immune because of preheating. Just absolutely nuts. And, you know, 20 damage is just such a joke. Totally crazy. This is where it gets neat. So Big Red appears and actually attacks Leton and pulls him. So he actually does some decent damage, but what's neat here is that Big Red didn't go into Leton's zone of control. He pulled Leton into his zone of control, meaning that had Big Red gone into Leton's zone of control, he would have gotten forestallment and overpowered, but instead, since he got pulled, he's actually going to get counterattacked, and of course, you know, he's going to get returning the enemy's force, and with the 500 or 400 damage that Big Red did, it's just going to be instant death. But what's particularly neat about this as well is that it didn't actually trigger forestallment, and because there was no unit left alive, guess what? Overpower is still in effect. So, you know, even at this point, it's just absolutely nuts, and Leton is the king of melee in this build.
Alright guys, that wraps up this video. Martial Artist is crazy in that it can go so many different directions, especially with Leton. It can be very confusing, especially for newer players, because you see, like, oh cool, it's a personal mastery for, you know, Frosty Fortress, this is specific to Leton. You should absolutely use it or something like that, and then they don't put enough speed on him, so he tends to lag behind, and then you just feel like, what is Leton doing? He's so slow, he's not getting anything done. And then you start removing abilities and start realizing he doesn't have the defenses or something like that, and it's just wild. This build is very simple, very efficient, and is particularly useful right now because we're fighting drifter clowns, you know, heavy melee, black clowns, white clowns, the mass, all that stuff. The crabs, you know, coming, heavy melee once again. It's just really good at the moment. I think it'll be good in the future, but you know, it's so fun to put together an overpower build, and I've been meaning to do this for a while, so I'm really glad it came together for Leton. Anyway, if you guys liked the video, please like and subscribe. Follow me on Twitch, and until next time.